It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first North American meeting of the Global Agritourism Network. My name's Lisa Chase, and I'm with University of Vermont Extension and the Vermont Tourism Research Center. And I have the honor of being the founding chair of the Global Agritourism Network. I first got involved with this global network back in 2018 when I went to the first World Congress on Agritourism that took place in Bolzano, Italy. There were around 250 participants from 42 countries, and there were maybe 10 of us from North America, a handful from the US, a handful from Canada, and a couple from Mexico. And many of you folks who were at that conference way back in 2018. I recognize some faces and names here. You're here with us today. But North America was less than 5% of the participants at that first conference. And at that conference, there was discussion of starting some sort of global association or network, but that didn't happen right away. What did happen right away, however, was talk about the next international conference. People said, this was great, we need to do it again. And University of Vermont Extension was planning to host the next International Agritourism Conference in October of 2020. However, we all know what happened in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic hit and conferences all got postponed. So like everybody else, we went online and we developed a virtual series, a webinar series. And that actually turned out to be very useful for building this network, building this community. We hosted over 20 different webinars on a variety of different topics and ended up having almost 3,000 participants from more than 80 countries joining in. Finally, we were able to get together in person again in August of 2022, and we met in Vermont, where we had over 500 participants, around 350 in person and 150 joining virtually. It was a hybrid conference. And many of you who are here today may remember that at the closing session of the conference, we had an open mic and there was a clear and passionate call for the development of some sort of global agritourism network or association. As a result, a small group of us began working together, and that included many of the folks who are here today, like NAFTMA International Agritourism Association, Farmstay USA, and folks from all over the world, including Agritourism India, Agritourism Africa, URAC Research, and several farmers and universities with leading agritourism researchers. The official launch of the Global Agritourism Network was a Zoom meeting, not so different from this one, and it took place on April 11th, and we had almost 700 registrants from more than 80 countries, and joining us live for that launch, we had almost 300 participants from over 50 countries. We are still in the early stages of developing this network, and we want to invite all of you to play an active role. You can see on the screen, there's a QR code that will take you to a form where you can sign up to be part of the Global Agritourism Network if you're not already part of it. And Claire can drop the link into chat that will also take you to the form to sign up to be part of the Global Agritourism Network. Our network currently has about 330 members, and almost half of them, more than 150, are from North America, which is this huge shift from the start of this at the first World Congress back in 2018 in Italy. We're at that first World Congress on Agritourism. North America was less than 5% of the participants, and now we're maybe a little overrepresented. Not that we should have fewer people from North America, but we want to expand the Global Agritourism Network around the world. And to that end, we've pulled together this amazing team of regional representatives. And here in North America, we are very fortunate to be led by two of the top agritourism professionals in this country and also working throughout the North America region and even internationally. I'd like to introduce Susie Spar, who is the Executive Director of the NAFTMA International Agritourism Association, and Scotty Jones, who is the Executive Director and founder of Farmstay USA. Scotty, Susie, I'd like to turn it over to you now.
Okay, so welcome to all of you for joining us this afternoon, as it may be. I am Scotty Jones. I am a sheep farmer here in Oregon and have been since 2003. I've also hosted my own farmstay since 2008. I founded Farmstay USA in 2010, which supports and promotes working farms and ranches around the US that offer lodging. Back in 2010, and almost even now, the term farmstay was something that nobody in the US was really familiar with. So we have been working hard to bring that to the fore as a tourism niche. And I have now taken on this job as chair of the North America region. Susie Spar, she's the executive director of NAFTMA International Agritourism Association, and she is here as the vice chair. She is also with GON, the head of the marketing and promotions group. But her organization, NAFTMA, has been in existence since the 1980s. And it was created to support farms who wanted to diversify back then into more large season events, things like pumpkin patches and corn mazes, farm stores. They put on a national conference every year, which is very well attended. And Susie just recently took a group of NAFTMA members to the UK to see how some of the farms over there operate and promote the similar kinds of events. So I want to be careful with this group because, as Lisa pointed out, there are a lot of US members with GON right now. And I want to make sure that as a group here that we do not become US centric. We want to be representative and support and listen to our neighbors in the South in Mexico and in the North in Canada. So I would invite all of you, if you have friends and cohorts in those other two countries, please invite them to join us, because I think we all share similar challenges in agritourism within our three countries. And I think that we can benefit from some of the solutions that some of our regions have sorted out, and or we can support helping our regions coming up with some best practices and, hey, this is how I did it and this is how you did it, and other ways to think about this. Because it just seems like agritourism, I mean, I hate to say that COVID was a benefit to a lot of us, but it did throw people out into the countryside. And we are all out in the countryside welcoming them, and we're learning how to do that. But there are challenges in terms of support from our counties, our states, our countries, as to why is agritourism important? Why is it an added value for farms? What will tourism do in our rural communities? I don't think we need to identify what agritourism is in the US. It's kind of been identified in different states in order to pass some laws, but there hasn't been much more support than that. And there is actually a GON committee specifically focused on defining agritourism in kind of a worldwide setting so that we all can use that as we go back to our regions and have chats with our local officials to try to push through different things. So I do think there are challenges, and we will be listening here to hear what you all have to tell us, but regulatory, marketing, recognition, I think those would probably be the three big things that everybody would agree on. So in the end, I'm hoping that this group can help to advance agritourism in our regions. But to start with this group today, it's really good to know who's in your backyard and who you can go turn to for assistance. The Global Agritourism Network has a lofty goal of sharing best practices. And it's already amazing in this initial group that Lisa talked about that we started up with what's happening around the world. I mean, I got a little jealous, honestly, of what some countries are promoting and allowing versus my state, which makes it pretty difficult to be an agritourism operator. So we're not here to tell you guys the direction that this group will take. We want to listen to what you have to say. We are going to share an interactive session where you can put in answers, and then we will share those with the group. Maybe there's some low-hanging fruit that will rise to the top. I'm hoping there's something like that. Maybe there's resources we can tap that you all have that we are unaware of. But we will listen, and we'll look forward to making really good time of, or good. We want to make sure that we make good use of your time. So in attending these sessions. So that's kind of the intro. I don't know, Susie, if there was anything else you wanted to add before. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce somebody from Mexico, somebody from the US, and somebody from Canada as regional reps, just to kind of explain a little bit where agritourism is in these countries.
The only thing I would add is during this, after the country representatives have had an opportunity to speak, we'll be going through a series of polls asking for input from all of you. But to start that and to make sure that we have an understanding of who everyone is within this digital room, we would like to start one of the polls, which is to describe yourself. And at this point, I would encourage you to check everything that applies to you. We understand that there are some extension providers, for instance, who are also farmers, so you would check both. So please take a quick moment to do that poll and submit, and then we will have one of our folks, after a few more minutes, bring up the totals. So generally speaking, it looks like most everyone is either a business owner, a tourism professional, a researcher, or an extension service provider. We have a fair number of farmers and ranchers, fair numbers of nonprofits, governments, and educators as well. So we've got a really nice mix, it looks like, throughout this group. So that gives everyone an opportunity to see who we are collectively. Now that we've done that, I am going to then pass it back to Scotty to introduce our first speaker for this time.
Great. Thank you, Susie. Okay, so our first speaker is Dr. Luis Alberto Morales. He is a full professor at San Quentin School of Engineering and Business of the Autonomous University of Baja California, Mexico. He's a member of the National System of Researchers Level 1 and has published several articles and book chapters on agritourism since 2015. He has been participating in almost all of the agritourism workshops held at these meetings and in 2 presentations at the first World Agritourism Conference in 2018 in Italy. He is currently writing a book specifically about agritourism in Mexico. So welcome, Dr. Morales. You can unmute yourself, and would you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
Good morning to all the presents. I'm going to read a little speech. I know that I written. I hope you will excuse my bad pronunciation. I hope you understand me, okay? Thank you very much for the opportunity that you give me to speak about agritourism in my country in front of you as a public knowledgeable about this business activity which unites us. Agritourism in Mexico is mainly represented by companies related to the production of wine. Thus, we can mention the wine route of Valle de Guadalupe in Baja California, Mexico, where there are large companies such as Cheto, is very known, and many other small ones located on the same road, or in the state of Querétaro, where there are also several wine routes. Other agricultural companies that are dabbling in this tourist activity are the industry of tequila, mezcal, cheese, nopal or prickly pear, and sweetmeats, among others. The latter are found mainly in the states of Jalisco and Oaxaca. All these types of companies have created thematic roads or tours among themselves. Each one offers tours within their farms. They give testing and finally offer their products for sale to tourists. The San Quintin Valley, which is where I am working, represents great potential for development of agritourism because it is an agricultural routes that has been little explored in terms of tourism. His potential in agritourism is enormous. I have personally written several articles and book chapters in Spanish on agritourism. I'm currently editing a second of 9-chapter book on business opportunities in agricultural enterprises in rural areas, and I am the author of 2 other chapters, one of which talks about business opportunities in rural tourism and agritourism. As a result of all my works on agritourism, I am preparing a third book precisely on agritourism in Mexico, which I hope to publish within the next 2 years. I can talk much about the agritourism in Mexico, but it's a large amount of companies working in this area, but it's impossible to mention to each one. There are many enterprises that are working in tourism inside of his ranch or farms. In Mexico, say ranch to the farms. And I hope that everybody knows this expression ranch. But that's all for you. Yeah, I hope
That's
everybody
great.
has
That's wonderful. And aren't the ranches called haciendas, I think?
haciendas, yes.
Haciendas, okay. And it looks like there may be a number of people in this group that are Spanish speakers. So I'm hoping that the conversation will be able to continue in native languages as well as in English. But thank you very much, Dr. Morales. Appreciate that. So our next speaker is going to be Christina Connell. She is the director of the USDA Agricultural Marketing Services Local and Regional Foods Division. We all know that as AMS. She calls herself a veggie-loving carnivore that began her career in 2010 in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Food and Nutrition. It looks as if she has worn many hats. She's been very interested in child nutrition. She was helped to run the first farm to school grant program and was able in another position to purchase $1.5 billion of food for the National School Lunch Program, which is fabulous. She actually earned her Bachelor of Arts in Spanish Literature and Latin American Studies, so I assume that her Spanish is relatively good as well. And she has a Master in Public Policy from UVA, University of Virginia. She really works hard for nutritious food that is tasty, but she's also focused on a system that promotes sustainability and economic prosperity for all the parties along the supply chain. So that would be us farmers. So anyway, I'd like to welcome Christina to tell us a little bit about what she does and where we're at here in the US.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for the invitation, Lisa. Thanks for the introduction, Scotty. Really happy to be here and connect with y'all. As Scotty noted earlier, we really saw agritourism as such an important piece of diversified markets, particularly during the pandemic. And we're seeing that kind of continue to have some stickiness and growth as we kind of move out of the pandemic days. And so we're really hoping to help producers who have diversified into that revenue stream, kind of to maintain that as we move forward. And really excited to have this partnership and to learn from our colleagues in the North and our colleagues in the South. So just great to be here. In terms of, kind of from the economic perspective of kind of grounding us in some numbers, right, the US Census of Agriculture is kind of the place to get official counts and numbers on how things are going. And so the latest data that we have is actually from 2017. The next census will be done next year. But in 2017, that Census of Agriculture reported that over 28,000 farms participated in some sort of agritourism or recreational services. So that's a lot. I should have the benchmark number of how many farms are in the US so we know what that percentage is, but I don't have that offhand. And with those 28,000 farms, that brought in about $950 million in revenue. So that means that we are looking at $1 billion industry just in the US, which is a really exciting opportunity for producers to think about how that can help their businesses grow. And then, as a consumer, right, and someone who brings my kids to the strawberry patch to pick strawberries, or to the apple orchard in the fall to pick apples, it's just such a great opportunity from our, as you all know, from a consumer perspective, to learn about how our food is grown and where it's coming from. We're, tend to lose our connection to the land really quickly, as my 3.5-year-old often says, let's go to the orange store. And it's like, well, no, we're not going to go to the orange store. These all come from or grown from land. And so want to make sure that he's growing up with knowing that, and knowing how food is produced and how hard and the labor that it takes to get good food. We're really excited, again, to be here in this partnership and think through how we can kind of further the agritourism industry. One thing that we have, that we do have, is USDA. My team manages the local food directories, and so we have a directory of farmers markets, food hubs, and now agritourism operations. So we've recently launched that. So there's not actually tons of operations in there. It's all self-reported. So it's something that we'd like to work with you all to promote and advertise, right? Because it's kind of one of those chicken or egg kind of things, right? More people will use it when more things are in there, but we have to get more listings in there. So I'll put that in the chat when I stop speaking. But we're excited. I think that could be a really good opportunity for producers to share what's going on and people to find them. And then, while it's not quite final yet, we are planning to partner with the University of Vermont on a national agritourism survey in the coming year to really survey and understand how agritourism operators are doing, and what kind of some of the best practices that we can learn from them. And that I assume would be a great tool to share with through this network, and with our partners in Canada and Mexico. So I think I'll stop there and just say we, at USDA, we're here to kind of support this network how we can, and excited to be active participants.
Great. Thank you very much, Christina. Appreciate that. And I will look forward to that link, because I'm not listed. So that's new to me. Okay, so our last speaker from Canada is David Gillespie. He's actually a farm owner. He's the chair of the Sustainable and Regenerative Agriculture and Agritourism Committee with GAN. He's also chair of the Canadian American Exchange Committee and a coordinator for the International Culinary Trail Committee. There's a trail that goes between Canada and Vermont. But he has been involved in agriculture for 47 years, mostly as a farmer. He's been practicing sustainable agriculture for many years, regenerative agriculture for the past 14. He direct sells to his clients, and he's been devoted to the exchange in agriculture and agritourism between Canada and the US since 2002. So welcome, David. Please tell us what's going on in Canada.
Well, how about with what Christina had mentioned, I have to say that and for a fact that we do not have data on agritourism in Canada. I know that because I dealt with the Ministry of Agriculture and they don't. However, and when I filled my last census as a farmer, there were questions pertaining to people coming to the farm. So hopefully one day we will have that data and that we can share with you, Christina, and everybody else. So, but in the meantime, it's just the way it is in Canada. That said, I did get a letter one day from the Minister of Agriculture of Canada, Minister Bibeau. I didn't ask for it, so I was surprised I got that in the mail. But she did found out that the conference in Bolzano, the First World Congress, that it went very well. So she was pleased to see that. So that was a surprise. Then she wrote to me that she supports the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. AAFC supports the advancements of culinary tourism in Canada. Food is key consideration for many travelers when selecting a travel destination. Promoting culinary tourism has the potential to have a positive impact on the Canadian agriculture and agri-food sector. So even the minister now is aware of it. So that's a good thing. It's just that they don't have data on anything. And so let's hope that that will go somewhere. Then she wrote, and this is important, she says they're currently developing a food policy for Canada, which will set a long-term vision for the Canadian food system. During consultations in the food policy, we heard the importance of local and regional food economies and how these economies have strong ties to culinary tourism. The objectives of a food policy for Canada indirectly supports efforts to advance culinary tourism in Canada. So I guess that is key, because without policy, I'm sure Christina can tell us that, you're not going to have any advancements in anything as far as how to advance an emerging industry. And there are challenges here. And I'm sure, Scotty, you can confirm that to me, a yay or nay. But we have, policy, like I said, is conducive for supporting agritourism. But the challenges are like regulations. We have regulations here. I don't know about you, Scotty, but we have them here. And and so, things between the federal, provincial, regional, and local can be really conflicting. Simple things like farm buildings. Well, they'll put that under commercial if it's a public, if you attract the public. That can be where regulations, for instance, in Ontario, you can have more than 2 people in an entire barn, which is insane. And I know this happened to some of our members. Infrastructure, overnights are great in the cities, but I'm sure when you go in the rural areas, as I'm sure you've experienced in your area, if you don't have a B&B or an overnight stay, it's very difficult. You almost have to sleep in your car and don't want to go there. So, and then the other thing is intergovernmental, and that I am going to be pushing very hard with the government to show how Canada can lead the world in cooperating between governments, agencies. That's, they're used to working in their own silos. We need to definitely get them aware of that. And Minister Bibeau wrote to her colleague back then, the Minister of Tourism, saying we need to work together. So that's a good start. So, and I, being a farmer, and Lisa can confirm that, I am relentless in pursuing getting their attention. So we will get their attention, and we will make sure that for the international conference coming up, that there's that they can show us how to work between governments. I think it needs to start there. If you don't, well, it gets complicated with conflicts. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Great. So thank you very much, David. So that kind of gives us a view of, what's going on in our different countries, what our challenges are. The next part of this is that Lisa and others are going to lead us through an interactive component. So so it gets your opportunity to kind of speak up in a format that will tell us kind of what the challenges are, who you are, and what's going on. And I forgot to mention at the very beginning, if you haven't done it, please in the chat, put who you are and where you're from, so that we get a full tally for who is here. Okay, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Scotty and Susie and David and Luis and Christina. Great to hear about what's going on. We now want to hear from all of you, and Scotty's got the right way to start us off it was great to see the incredible mix of professions, from farmers to researchers to government to nonprofits to folks in tourism. It's now nice to see my chat lighting up with who you are and where you're from. We're gonna throw a few polls at you that ask you different questions about your experiences with agritourism, specifically where you are and throughout North America. So keep typing into chat who you are and where you're from, but I'm also gonna launch a poll. You should see a poll now that asks, what are the greatest challenges for agritourism here in North America? And like that first poll question, this is another one where you can select all that apply. So select as many concerns as you have, or just select one. And with all of these questions, please feel free to type into chat more, not just the other type into chat. If you want to expand on it, ideally this would be set up in a way that would really capture open-ended questions and communication, but we're still trying to figure out the best ways to do that on Zoom or on these online platforms. So feel free to not only introduce yourself in chat, but also add some discussion about your challenges. And I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
So regulations and zoning, that's what I hear here in the US the most. And lack of data, it's interesting at 51%. I think in terms of us for dealing with regulations and zoning, probably in Canada too, it sounds like with David, I'm not sure about in Mexico, but if we had that data, it would be easier for us to then go talk to our officials about helping us with some of this regulation and zoning. And insurance, Susie and I have talked about insurance. Our insurance agencies here in the US don't exactly know what agritourism is, and it makes them very nervous. So Susie, do you have any other comments on this?
No, you went through them pretty well.
And now we're going to move on to another question, which asks you about what would you like to get out of your participation in this North America region group of the Global Agritourism Network? How would you like to benefit from being here today and on into the future as we develop this out? So I'm ending the poll and I'm sharing the results now, and Susie and Scotty, feel free to weigh in.
Somebody said they want to learn about new resources. I think that's a fantastic piece, and it goes to the ability of all of our different organizations to be able to share effectively within and between each other those different resources. I would say making new contacts and increasing knowledge, community, all of that kind of makes a lot of sense as well.
Yep, and I would concur on that. I mean, I think that some of us, as far as resources go, there's a lot of expertise in this room here, and sharing that just benefits us all. Yep.
I'm stopping the share and moving on to the next poll question, so the last one was, what do you want to get out of the Global Agritourism Network? Well, we're all building this together, and it's definitely a shared effort. So this next question is, how would you like to contribute? How can you contribute to this regional effort here? And we lined up these responses. One of the challenges of doing the polls is we had to come up with responses in advance, as opposed to just sort of having open-ended questions. And these responses line up with our Global Agritourism Network committees. And as of now, they're not specific to any region. For example, David Gillespie is chairing the Global Agritourism Network Committee on Sustainable and Regenerative Agriculture and Agritourism. And it's people from all over the world, not specific to any particular region, but so we ask you how you want to contribute to this region and in general, and depending on what the responses are, it may make sense to do things on a regional level, or even smaller, even groups within a region, or work at the global level. But here's a bunch of thematic areas, topics, asking you how you want to contribute. And as always, we've got that other category, because you don't have to necessarily be thinking in these categories. You may be really great at organization, or really great at, managing emails or whatever, and want to contribute in that way. So I'm now ending the poll and sharing results, and I'll open it up to Scotty and Susie to weigh in on what you're seeing.
So the funding part, that's always very tiny in terms of how we go about funding some of our initiatives. But I do understand that since most of us are land-based and working in the dirt, or teaching or about the dirt. In terms of education training, so that shows kind of a lot where we are. I consider farmers educators as well, if we're into agritourism. Research, lovely. I love to see that, because again, that's really going to support the communications and marketing and getting out there and becoming something that is agritourism, that people recognize, both from a tourism point of view, but also from a policy point of view. Those are my thoughts. Susie.
Ditto.
All right, that's great. And I'll add, we don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but if you have specific ideas or specific ways you'd like to get involved, drop them into chat. Or if you don't feel comfortable with that, reach out to me, reach out to any of us, and we're happy to talk with you. I mean, we often joke that by building this Global Agritourism Network and, here with the North America region, we're building this plane as we fly it. So we're all in this together, and inviting people to get involved and contribute what they can. I'm now going to put along those lines one more question, which is, what sort of level of leadership are you interested in taking? Might you be interested in leading a committee? And if so, let us know which one, or being an active member. And we get that everyone is overloaded and probably is too much already on your plate. And we understand that, we respect that. But for those of you who do have capacity now, or think you might have capacity in the future to get more involved, feel free to drop a comment into chat, or again, reach out to any one of us and let us know exactly what you're thinking. And I'll now end the poll and share the results. Susie, Scotty, one of you want to weigh in?
I'm so glad to see so many people are interested in being an active member of a committee. I would say for anyone who lead a committee, we very much welcome you to contact directly any one of us associated with this particular meeting, or to put it into chat so that we can get you into the right direction and have you in that. And then as long as everyone is taking the opportunity to fill out the Global Agritourism Network survey that was put into chat to begin with, indicating your interest on that, as a part of that, you can say which committees would be of interest to you. And then the committee chairs continue to reach out.
And I would say I'm just excited that you all want to be active members of, this committee, of the regional committee, because I think that's what's going to push us forward and help us, as I said, find out who's in the room and how we can support each other, and maybe tackle some low-hanging fruit, or start to tackle some regulatory issues that maybe, or infrastructure issues that I saw were in Mexico. How have you done it here? This is how we're doing it here. And we can move the dial forward a little bit. That's the whole purpose of this.
That's right. And the goal is not to add more extra work or more work for anyone. The hope is that this really ties into work that you're already doing. And by connecting and working collaboratively, we're all more effective. I'm going to drop another question in. And this is actually meant as an open-ended question, but I can't set up a poll with an open-ended question. So really, this is a question where you should type into chat. And basically, who is missing? Who's not in the room? And how can we connect to them? How can we invite them here? And you may not have had a chance to look through all the different people popping up in chat, but give it some thought to, are all the professions represented here? What about the demographics? Are there certain underrepresented groups that we should be very deliberately and specifically reaching out to? I will say I had a look at the registration list, and we're a lot of people from the US here. There's a reasonable number from Canada, and there's a handful from Mexico. So I think we can, great to see, Ricardo and Luis and a few people here from Mexico, but I think, that's certainly some folks who I feel are missing. So I want to invite you to, type into chat or share your thoughts in other ways if you don't feel comfortable typing into chat now, about who else should be in the room and what can we actively do and deliberately do to help people get involved. Launch our final poll question, which asks how would you like to connect with this group moving forward? And here we just brainstormed a variety of ideas, from periodic Zoom meetings to emails from leadership, kind of top-down emails like the MailChimp emails we send out, or should we have sort of a listserv where anyone could email anyone else, or Facebook groups, or getting together in person, either organized by this group, or there's also the possibility of doing it in connection with existing agritourism groups getting together. For example, NAFTMA, International Agritourism Association, hosts many different events. The National Extension Tourism Network also hosts some events related to agritourism, and so many, Farmstate USA does, and so many, I know we've got a lot of state and provincial organizations as well related to agritourism. So there may be opportunities to piggyback on existing events going on. I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results now.
Oh, good. Quarterly meetings. Okay. That's great.
That's easy and good to make happen.
Yep. A listserv, I will have to say, in my experience, I love listservs because that's a good way that everybody can chime in if they have something to say about. Those are usually good for questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? And then, yeah, I'm hoping at the next International Agritourism Conference, we will all be able to meet. Anything else, Susie?
Nothing that's popping out other than emails from leadership. So that's certainly sharing that type of information is something that can be done as well.
Yep. Yeah. And that will be something that you will probably hear from us once we kind of analyze the chat and can reflect on how this meeting went, and just get back to you with kind of a synopsis of what we heard. And then you can tell us what you think.
Sounds great. Susie and Scotty, additional closing remarks? We've got a little less than 10 minutes to go.
I would just say that this is great that you all showed up for this in the middle of a Thursday. And, you know, it's our very first meeting. So we're just kind of introducing ourselves to each other and kind of to this concept of where does agritourism go for all of us in our respective countries, and how can we share across borders what we know. I'm hoping there will be multiple ways that we stay in touch. So emails, maybe a listserv, yes, a quarterly meeting. The next quarterly meeting then would be sometime around September. And hopefully you will get involved maybe in some other parts of the Global Agritourism Network and meet people from around the world, which I've found to be very exciting to do. There is National Extension Tourism Network. There's NAFTMA as a network. There's Farmstay USA as a network. In your local states and countries, there will maybe be agritourism associations. I know in the US, there are some that have started up, supported differently in different states, not consistently. And then we want to be a resource for you as well. So if you have a question, now that we have this kind of large group of names and emails, we can always try to parse things out to assist as well. But we're kind of here to, you know, become this group, and I'm really excited about that. Susie.
I would echo absolutely the excitement that is generated from being able to see everyone on here and to be able to continue to build this group, this community, this sharing of information. Glad that we're able to take all the amazing suggestions, and thank you to everyone for all the information you put into chat. And we encourage the conversation to continue. If some idea comes to your mind in a week or 2 weeks, then please, by all means, continue the conversation or share that idea so that we can continue to build this, to grow, and to share appropriately as we can, truly with the idea of being able to make the industry the absolute best it can be.
And I have one other thing to add, since we are doing this in English. If there are people in this group who do are not native speakers, but do speak Spanish or French, that would benefit us in some of that cross-cultural conversations, I'd love for you to mention that in chat or at some time raise your hand so that we aren't so English-centric in this, understanding that we are 3 different countries.
Thank you. I'm so glad you brought that up, Scotty and Susie. Great remarks. And I noticed a lot of people are dropping links into chat for different agritourism things going on. And I looked at the registration list before coming here today. And one of the comments, we had different suggestions from people. For example, should there be a membership directory? And, you know, as well as some of the suggestions like an online calendar of events going on around the region. So these are all great ideas that we're going to be looking at and trying to see how we can operationalize these ideas and of course work collectively with all of you to do that. So in closing, I want to especially thank Scotty and Susie for leading this regional effort. I want to thank Luis Alberto, Christina, and David for speaking on behalf of Mexico, the US, and Canada, and giving us a little background there. And mostly I want to thank all of you for taking an hour out of your busy day and joining us. We hope this is the start, just the start of a very productive network that is growing in leaps and bounds. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will absolutely stay in touch. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.